something in the name of the person who says it brings redemption to the world. So actually a writer named Warren Farrell makes this point, and he makes the point that when judges look at cases involving sexuality, I'm not talking about violent sexuality or rape or sexual harassment, which is abominable, all of those things. I'm talking about the kind of sexual cases which are much more political. They're much more borderline. They're much more unclear. So one of the problems Farrell points out is that the judge is looking at it without the experience of the mutual desire flowing between the people. And the same thing with Bush. Like when you look on the outside, we've all had a moment where we ate too much too fast. Right? Yeah. No one would want it filmed. Right? So it's everyone has moments in which they engage the physical world in an insufficiently sacred and holy way. Right? Because we are, as Nachmanides says, right? We're beings which participate in the lower and in the higher worlds at the same time. So if you want to dismiss a person, what you do is you focus on a bad moment of lower world activity, right? And then you say, oh my God, the guy's such a fool. But who do I know? I happen to be a slow eater, but I'm sure I've done other things in eating that are somehow off in one day. Who do we know who hasn't at one moment had a sandwich they ate too fast and too much of? So in that sense, I thought there was just something inelegant about it. But I just noticed that that's the way we always kind of try and dismiss people. It's always in that way. So with Bush, you couldn't quite hit him on sexuality. That was a Clinton thing, right? So they hit him on eating. They hit him on the other thing.
They portrayed him as a fool.
Yeah, I
don't think he's a fool. He's not that dumb.
But not only is he not a fool, the notion that you can become president of the United States as a fool, is absurd. Right? That's A. And B, and I remember watching the Bush-Gore debates, right? And it's very, very clear that, Gore had an enormous, command of facts, and of complexity. Gore's no man's fool. It's also very clear that Bush held his own during the debates. Bush wasn't, ignorant of the issues. He had a fairly, clear sense of what he believed in and where he was going. And so clearly the man's no fool, and that's in general, dismissing people is never a good idea. Holiness is always about complexity and about holding, the paradox of people. Maybe here's the last thing to say on this point, because we talked about mockery. But the opposite of mockery is holy laughter. And the difference, of course, is very beautiful. Holy laughter, the mystics point out in a book called the Book of Yetzirah, right, the first, kind of Hebrew mystical book. Laughter holds paradox. That's what laughter is. Laughter is a faculty of perception, right, says this book, which holds paradox. It holds opposites, which is why at a wedding, right, when masculine and feminine come together, oh my God, right, so you need, a gesture, you need laughter, because laughter allows for the paradox to come together. So holding paradox is holding complexity. That's where holiness is. Holiness is always they say, tachlita nigudim, right, and holding opposites together. When you can't hold opposites together, so then you nullify, right, then you mock, right, because you've got to reduce everything to its kind of, most base form, because you're not able to hold the complexity. The complexity makes you uncomfortable. So it's always the choice. The choice is, the sacred laughter, right, or mockery.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One problem I had with the film is that I never identified with, particularly liked, or was even terribly intrigued with the protagonist. The guy that they put at the center of their movie is definitely not likable, and he's not terribly intriguing or charismatic either. He's just this bumbling fraternity boy who grows up and finds Jesus. And so that's a pretty big problem when your lead character in a movie is not someone who pulls you in.
Right.
The way they described him.
Yeah, I guess I think that's right. The other question, which I really don't know the answer to, which is I don't know if you have a thought on this. I've thought about it quite a bit, but I've never devoted the time to actually. You could probably find out the answer to this question if you worked hard enough. I'm sure you know that there's all sorts of conspiracy theories, in America about all sorts of things, right? There's a conspiracy theory world. The Twin Towers were blown up by God knows who. And it's a Twin Towers conspiracy world. There's a JFK. There's a whole discussion now I've heard from people that, suggest a certain conspiracy around Barack Obama becoming elected, which is, a very nefarious view. And I always wondered about conspiracy theories. You know, I'm mentioning it because I was actually just thinking about Fahrenheit 9/11.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that documentary, and which kind of also had an implied conspiracy theory about Bush and his relationship to the Saudis, and why he didn't do anything, why he didn't react, and and that's kind of woven by people into kind of who actually took down the Twin Towers, and were they taken down in order to get into Iraq, and the whole. And I've always myself wondered, for many years I thought the conspiracy theories were ridiculous. I mean, there's complete nonsense, right? I mean, who would, and then I have to say, as I began reading, just because there was someone I knew who was involved, I began reading around the assassination of Rabin, right? And there's actually some really, really compelling material that seems to indicate, pretty convincingly, like, wow, like, empirical, information that seems to suggest that things, that happened were very, very different than what actually happened. And then, and as I've gotten older and I've actually seen myself firsthand, biographically, with friends, autobiographically, where there's such a huge gap between the truth, between the empirical reality and between what sometimes is the perception of the truth, that you kind of sometimes wonder, do we really know what's going on? In other words, do we really actually have any real sense of what's really happening? In other words, whether that's, Bush and Iraq, whether that's Obama, you get you wonder sometimes. You wonder sometimes.
Right.
So
that's one of the things. Yeah. That's one of the things I love about being a reporter is that you have more access to what's really going on, or you try to. Like, I find a few things as intoxicating and as exhilarating as like getting the truth that is not widely known.
Yeah, no, revealing the truth, and of course, truth is a value that needs to be balanced with other values. But basically, I mean that is, I think it may be true that on the one hand, the internet world that we've talked about before, one of its advantages is it's the democratization of information, right? It's available, and a person can decide that they're a reporter, and actually, depending on their ability, can actually report or not report, and it's up to people democratically vote. Are they going to listen or not listen? So that's the good news. And of course, the bad news is that there's such a plethora of information. There's so much information that in order to be able to sift through and find, the truth, it's very, very hard to do. So in a certain sense, we're in the opposite situation of where we used to be. There were two newspapers, William Randolph Hearst and the New York Times, and Sulzberger, and that's it. And it's controlled by these kind of two people or three people or four. Today it's the opposite. There's so much information, but I kind of wonder today also, though. Can you really get to the truth? How do you actually sift information? It's not easy. It's not easy. Right. The move from information to wisdom is not easy.
The part of the movie that warmed my heart and made me really love it was the portrayal of George and Laura. Like that struck me as real and as sweet, and I love that section of the movie.
Luke, I am always happy to hear when your heart is warmed.
Yeah, it's not often.
That just makes me happy. That warms my heart. They were very sweet. I mean, they were very, very sweet. It was you got a real sense. I mean, she's a very, very tough woman. She's a very, very tough woman. I would never, I would never say anything publicly about anyone in general, but certainly someone I don't know. But what I can say is, I actually encountered her. I did the audio track on the book Soul Prince. We did an audio book like you usually do at Simon & Schuster, right, the day after she did her stuff, at Simon & Schuster. So, I actually had some encounter, and she is an incredibly tough woman. Right? I mean, she is like, whoa. She is not a sweet grandmother, right? She is a, tough, in control, knows what she wants, powerful, matriarchal figure, of the first order. Yeah. Huh. So blessings to her, huh?
Yeah, well, that part of it didn't really come out in the movie. It didn't.
That's what I was mentioning. No, it didn't at all. It didn't at all. You got a much warmer, fuzzier, sweeter. You got a. I mean, you did get the kind of Bush patrician sense.
Yes.
And you also got, I liked the Jeb point of the movie. I've thought about the Jeb thing a number of times. That is what is kind of, funny about the George Bush story, and it's kind of where, divine providence and karma, which are, two ways of